What is up everybody, it's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and I've been planning to make this video for a long time. In this video, I will talk about 5 anime that have genuinely changed my life. By this, I don't mean anime that I enjoyed watching, and there are many of those, but rather I mean anime that actually affected my life in a profound way. These are all anime that I rewatch often and that I look to for inspiration, motivation, and important life lessons. These are also all older and very popular anime, so chances are you've seen at least some of them, but I will still do my best to avoid major plot spoilers. I will, however, have to talk about the setup and some of the most important themes that the anime deals with, so be prepared for that. If you end up enjoying this video, let me know down in the comments, and if we end up getting more than 1,000 likes, I will take that as a sign that you guys want me to make a part 2 where I talk about 5 more anime that changed my life. And now let's get started. At number 5, Death Note. Just like a lot of kids who grew up in the West, I was exposed to anime through shonen classics like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Z, and Naruto. But as a kid who grew up watching these shows, I never thought of them as separate or different from the other Western cartoons that I was watching. And this makes sense since many of these anime were geared towards a younger audience, and on top of that, we had companies like 4Kids censoring many aspects of certain anime series to make them more child-friendly. Anyone who knows about the Shadow Realm in Yu-Gi-Oh! Knows exactly what I'm talking about. The first time I realized that anime can be for mature audiences was back in 2010 when I was visiting family in Serbia and randomly surfing through TV channels late at night. I couldn't find anything to watch, so when I came across a cartoon, I stopped because I found it interesting that a cartoon would be airing on TV after midnight. By this point, my younger brother Gurren was already into anime and he kept telling me to check out some of his favorites, so I decided to give this show a chance. The series was Death Note, and my brother had mentioned it to me before, so I thought, why not? I don't have anything else to do, so let's see what this is all about. The episode I ended up watching was episode 7, where Light Yagami meets Naomi Misora, and even though I didn't even know the setup for the anime since I didn't see the beginning, I was immediately struck by 2 things. First, how mature this cartoon was in terms of the atmosphere and the themes, and second, how much it relied on strategy that actually required serious thought. I remember thinking that this was most certainly not a cartoon for little kids. Kids wouldn't even understand most of it, and after that one episode I decided to give the entire show a chance. When I got back to Canada, I watched the entire series and I absolutely loved it, and when my brother told me that there were other anime out there just as mature and interesting as Death Note, I instantly started watching those, including Code Geass, Fullmetal Alchemist, Darker Than Black, and many more. I was hooked. I was an anime fan. Death Note covers many really interesting themes, including the concept of justice and what justice really means in the modern world. As a student of political science and philosophy, this was right up my alley, and I thought that Light was an excellent character. At first you relate to him and even want to root for him. He is getting rid of violent criminals and saving the lives of innocent people. When the system fails, and we all know that it often does, Kira doesn't fail. But as the series progresses and Light keeps crossing one line after another, you have to start questioning at what point Kira becomes exactly what he is fighting. At what point does Kira himself become a violent criminal who doesn't think twice about killing the innocent as long as it serves his own ends? But the primary reason that I had to include Death Note on this list is that it was my first mature anime, and it is largely responsible for my love of anime today. If I hadn't seen Death Note when I did, and if the series wasn't able to draw me in, even though I turned the channel to a random episode and not even the first episode, I may never have gotten into anime. And I probably never would have become an anime YouTuber, and you wouldn't be watching this video right now. At number 4, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Not long after watching Death Note, I discovered Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood as it was one of the most popular series of the time. Brotherhood began airing in 2009 and I got into anime in 2010. The 2 things that instantly grabbed me with this anime were the great characters and the fascinating world. I especially loved how Brotherhood brings together Eastern and Western cultures and philosophies. For example, the difference between the Western alchemy of Amestris and the Eastern alchemy of Jing is extremely interesting. Alchemy is focused on concepts like science and manipulating nature in order to accomplish certain goals and to gain power. But alchemy revolves around the idea that the earth has a flow or chi, also known as ki in Japanese, which is life energy that surges through nature all around us. And this energy can be harnessed in order to heal rather than destroy. In this sense, alchemy is focused on having power over nature, while alchemy is centered around living in harmony with nature. Alchemists are interested in creating a philosopher's stone, while practitioners of alchemy develop their abilities in search for the elixir of life. And this is inspired by real events in our own world, where historically Western alchemists were primarily concerned with creating the philosopher's stone, which would allow them to turn base metals into gold, while Eastern alchemists and Chinese alchemists in particular were interested in finding the elixir of life, which would theoretically allow those who consume it to have perfect health and to live forever. In fact, the more you study the world of Fullmetal Alchemist, the more you discover how much it was inspired by real historical events and beliefs, which is something that I, as a lover of history, find really appealing. There are also many other references to both Eastern and Western philosophy in Brotherhood, such as the Gate of Truth, which has many parallels with elements of Western philosophy and mythology, and the concept itself reminds me of Plato's form of the good. But the one aspect of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood that I personally found the most striking was the critique of consumerism that is so clear in this anime. In modern society, consumerism refers to the idea that we should all acquire as many goods and services for ourselves as possible. Because in the modern world we have plenty of resources and commodities, a lot more than we need just to survive, we are constantly being encouraged to buy more, to take more, to use more. Billions of dollars are spent every year on advertising products to us, and we proceed to buy all sorts of things that we don't need just so we can show others how much we have. In Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, the nation of Amestris is the embodiment of consumerism. It constantly wages wars to acquire more land, the ruling elite especially embodies greed, vanity, and a thirst for power, and so on. In fact, the homunculi are the most clear representations of the sins of modern society, including of course greed, envy, lust, gluttony, wrath, pride, and sloth. Gluttony is an especially poignant example as he takes consumption to a whole new level and literally consumes human beings. Without getting into extreme spoilers, we later learn that human sacrifice plays a major role in the series, driving home the idea that in society where consumerism is rampant, even human beings become commodities. Even human beings are consumed in the name of money and power. On the other hand, our protagonists, the Elric brothers and their friends, are shown to be the opposite of the corrupt rulers of Amestris. They are selfless, noble, and they value friendship over all else. They rely on friendship and a sense of community, of brotherhood, to stand against the excessive consumerism of the villains, and this important message really stuck with me. As some of you may know, I am a fiction writer, and I have published several short stories in professional magazines and journals. I also wrote a novel which I'm currently sending out to agents in the hopes of getting it published, and alchemy, albeit a different type of alchemy from the one we see in Fullmetal Alchemist, plays an important role in my book. While I have had many inspirations, including anime, books, movies, and real-life experiences, I can safely say that Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood was one of the biggest inspirations for my novel. And when we consider all of these factors, it is easy to see just how much this anime changed my life. At number 3, Fooly Cooly. Fooly Cooly is a short 6-episode anime that has stuck with me for years after I first watched it, and it is one of those anime that I love to watch over and over again. I even made an entire 22-minute video explaining Fooly Cooly and all the themes and messages within it, but to keep it brief here, what I love about this anime is that it shows us that the adult world and the social and cultural norms of that world make no sense. The show follows teens, and primarily the protagonist Naota, as they try to come to terms with this senseless adult world and its social and cultural pressures and expectations. All of us have at some point been told to grow up and act mature, to be an adult, and children are all expected to one day act in a way that meets our definition of what an adult is. Certainly, adult fans of anime are constantly told that cartoons are for kids and that they need to just act their age. And if you don't meet society's definition of being mature and an adult, you are considered abnormal, like there is something wrong with you. However, Fooly Cooly asks the important question, who is truly abnormal here? Is it children who still have an open mind, who know how to be creative and think outside the box, who are not yet backed into a corner by social pressures and expectations? Or is it adults who often lead meaningless lives and do senseless things just because that is what is expected of them by society? In Fooly Cooly, Medical Mechanica is a giant factory shaped like an iron, and it is introduced right at the beginning of the very first episode. All the adults are happy when it first came to town, but our young protagonist Naota, a 6th grader, sees it as a bad omen and he doesn't understand it. Medical Mechanica is the symbol of the conformism of the adult world. It flattens everything and makes everything the same. It covers everything in the smoke of everyday life and keeps us from seeing the extraordinary things in life. Eventually we learn that this factory appears to have no entrances or exits, which represents the fact that the adult world with its social pressures and expectations is so immersive that we forget that there is even an outside world at all. We cannot leave the factory, the machine, because we forgot that we entered it in the first place. The reason that many people find Fooly Cooly to be confusing and over the top is that it features some very bizarre things, such as a robot and other massive objects emerging from the protagonist's head. But I feel that such bizarre occurrences symbolize how new and different ideas of the youth are seen as bizarre by the adult world. The nonsensical nature of the adult world seems to provoke a reaction from the youth who are not yet corrupted by it. And Naota's NO, or weird head portal, appears to be directly triggered by activities associated with Medical Mechanica. The fact that this phenomenon is named NO could also mean that the key to escaping conformity is to just say no to the adult world and its expectations. The key to escaping the insanity of what we consider adulthood comes quite literally out of the heads of the youth. There are many other factors that I can talk about here, like direct references to The Little Prince and other important works, but if you want to know more, you can check out the full Fooly Cooly video. The reason that this anime changed my life is because we are living in the nonsensical adult world right now. We live in a world where money is all that matters, where the truth can be bought by the same money through media propaganda, and where those who are already powerful get to decide what the rest of us should and shouldn't do. When you are told to act your age, what you are really being told is to conform to the rules and expectations created by others, to stop being creative and to do whatever someone else wants you to do. The reason that Fooly Cooly changed my life is because every time I think about it and every time I rewatch it, it reminds me to think outside the box and not to limit myself to what the so-called adult world expects of me. Not too long ago, I finished a PhD in political science, and I had always assumed that once I put that much hard work into my studies, they would pay off and I would be able to get a good job in my field. But after I graduated, I quickly realized that this was not the case. After applying for at least 100 academic and administrative positions that I knew I was well qualified for, I quickly realized that what you know did not matter nearly as much as who you know. I didn't receive a single interview out of all of these jobs that I applied for because most were simply given internally to people who already worked at that same institution, even though I was more qualified. Or the people that were hired had years of experience working that same job, which is something I couldn't possibly have as someone who just came out of school. If I wanted to work in my field, I realized that I would have to work temporary contract positions that pay much less and have no benefits or guarantee that I would still have the job a few months from now. When I realized that, I had a choice to make. Take the contract positions and hope and pray that one day in the future I could land a more stable job, which is what the vast majority of people in my position do. Or I could do something that most people would consider completely crazy, and after getting my PhD, I could become an anime YouTuber. Since I had no stability anyway, I decided to dedicate myself to something I love, and I put my energy into building this YouTube channel along with my brother Gozen. Even though many people around me either laughed or were shocked by the concept of someone with a PhD making videos about Japanese cartoons on YouTube, the lessons I learned from anime like Fooly Cooly taught me to think outside the box and to be willing to try something that most other people would consider crazy. Today, I am very grateful that I decided to dedicate my time to YouTube and to doing something that I genuinely love. As of this moment, Anime Uproar has over 10 million views, meaning that my work on this channel has reached millions of people from around the world. That is something that I never could have accomplished with any of the other jobs that I had applied for, and I am grateful to all of you who watch this channel and to anime like Fooly Cooly for changing my life in this way. At number 2, My Neighbor Totoro. I'm a huge fan of Miyazaki's films in general, and I could make an entire video on how much I've enjoyed his incredible work, but 2 Miyazaki films have really stood out in my mind as life-changing. Those 2 films are Laputa, Castle in the Sky, and My Neighbor Totoro, both films that I rewatch probably at least twice a year. But for the purposes of this video, I will talk about My Neighbor Totoro, and if there's a part 2, then I will definitely talk about Castle in the Sky as well. If I could describe My Neighbor Totoro in only a few words, I would say that this film is a celebration of life. Miyazaki is famous for how he celebrates life by portraying both the environment and the characters in his work in a beautiful yet realistic way. Miyazaki seems to hate the idea of escapism, the idea that anime is something that you should watch to forget your problems and escape the real world. Even though Miyazaki includes many fantasy elements in his films, he generally doesn't draw his characters with massive eyes, rainbow-colored hair, or impossible jiggle physics. When he draws nature and landscapes, he brings out the beauty of these often ordinary scenes. We've all seen trees and grass and mountains many times, and the type of nature that we see in Miyazaki's films is nature that we could theoretically see anywhere in the world. However, Miyazaki is able to capture the incredible beauty and majesty of these ordinary sights, and by doing this, he allows those of us watching to remember to appreciate all of the natural beauty that is all around us in the real world. My Neighbor Totoro is the perfect example of this, and it demonstrates so clearly how well Miyazaki understands what it means to be alive, to be human. Everything in this film flows brilliantly. The organic, sincere dialogue, the story, the action, it all moves so naturally, just like life itself. In the film, only children can see Totoro and the other magical creatures because children are still pure and they haven't been corrupted by the logic of adults. This is again very similar to the themes of Fooly Cooly and works like The Little Prince, but the idea is that once we grow up, we begin to think that we understand the world. We have our science, our logic, and our common sense, so we cannot see the hidden magic all around us. But children who are still open-minded and willing to discover new things can still sense and see the things that we cannot. Interestingly enough, the adult characters in My Neighbor Totoro, including Mei and Satsuki's father and mother and Kanta's grandmother, are surprisingly open-minded to the existence of magical creatures. Even though they themselves cannot see Totoro, they don't dismiss it as a childish fantasy, and I think that these adults represent the type of person Miyazaki is and the type of people he wants us to be. Open-minded, carefree, and children at heart. My Neighbor Totoro might appear to be a film for children, and surely children will enjoy it, but it is even more a film for adults. It teaches us, the so-called adults, the importance of seeing through the eyes of a child, of being open to the beauty and wonder all around us, and of not letting ourselves be imprisoned and brainwashed by the daily grind and the social pressures of the modern world. Miyazaki doesn't want us to escape to some isekai fantasy world full of bright colors and gratuitous fan service. He wants us to look around and discover the magic and beauty of our own world. He wants us to be open to magic and miracles, because the miracle of nature and of the universe is all around us, and we as humans cannot begin to understand it all, even with the help of science and technology. We need to feel it and understand it on a deeper, more spiritual level, but we can only do that once we have an open mind. It was a dream, but it wasn't a dream. My Neighbor Totoro has truly changed my life and made it better. Not only am I reminded about the beauty and miracle of life whenever I rewatch it, but the majestic depictions of nature have stuck with me to such an extent that when I meditate, and meditation is something I practice daily as part of my spiritual growth and self-development, I often picture the natural beauty depicted in My Neighbor Totoro as a way to clear and relax my mind. In that way, I can honestly say that this film has contributed to improving my mental health, and as such, it has without a doubt changed my life for the better. And at number 1, Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. This is the one anime that has changed my life the most, and largely for this reason, it is also my favorite anime of all time. While Gurren Lagann can be enjoyed as just a fun action shonen in a post-apocalyptic setting with a unique animation style, what I love the most about this series is the inspirational philosophical message that can be found just below the surface. In the very first episode, our two protagonists, Simone and Kamina, are in a village that is literally in an underground cave. The village is plagued by frequent earthquakes which cause widespread structural damage, and Simone's parents were killed in one such earthquake. Simone is a digger who digs in order to expand the village underground and also in order to find treasures that might be hidden underground. Kamina is his best friend and is a few years older, but the two of them are so close that Kamina considers Simone to be his soul brother, his brother in spirit. Kamina is a rebellious young man who leads the other youth of the village to try to climb up to the surface and leave the cave. Meanwhile, the village chief and many others don't believe that there is a surface at all. They've never seen it, the cave is all they know, and when Kamina tells them that there is a surface and there is no ceiling there, meaning they won't have to worry so much about earthquakes, he is called a liar and a troublemaker. To me, this is one of the best setups for an anime ever, because what we have here is literally Plato's allegory of the cave in anime form. If you are not familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave, I will explain it briefly. Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher whose teacher Socrates was put to death by the government of Athens for allegedly corrupting the youth by teaching them about views and philosophies that were contrary to the accepted beliefs of society. Just like Kamina, Socrates wanted the youth to look beyond the conventional wisdom established by society, and for this reason he was called a liar and a troublemaker. In his famous book The Republic, Plato wants to explain how philosophers, people who think outside the box and question conventional wisdom, differ from other people. He gives us an allegory in which a group of people have been chained to the wall of a cave their entire lives, and they are chained in such a way that they are always facing the same blank wall. There is a fire behind them that they can't see, and the light that the fire creates projects shadows on the wall. The shadows is all that these people know. It is their entire world, their reality. This is all they've ever known, so they accept it as the only reality because they don't know any better. The philosopher is like a prisoner who frees himself from the chains and is able to stand up and see what's really happening. He comes to understand that the shadows on the wall are not reality, just illusions, and he is able to climb up and leave the cave to see what the surface really looks like. He sees the trees, the sky, the sun, and so on. The philosopher then comes back and tries to tell the people who are still in the cave and still tied up just looking at shadows on a wall that that is not the real world. But the people who are stuck in the cave don't believe him because he is challenging everything they think they know. In fact, they call him a liar and try to kill him, just like the citizens of Athens killed Socrates, because they don't want their worldview to be challenged. They don't want to believe that there is a surface at all, a world beyond the cave, because that would mean that everything they've believed in their entire lives has been wrong. Kamina is the philosopher. He is a visionary who knows that there is a surface, a world beyond the cave. The others don't believe him until a giant mecha falls through the ceiling of the cave, revealing the surface. When this happens, Kamina is ready, and he inspires Simone to fight back against the giant mecha using a small mecha that Simone found by accident during one of his digs. Together with Yoko, a girl from the surface who was fighting the giant mecha as well, they defeat the mecha and leave the village for the surface. The surface is full of these giant mecha known as gunmen, and at first Simone wants to return to the village, to the cave, because he is scared of this new and dangerous world. But Kamina refuses to go back, and he forces Simone to stand and fight against all odds. He forces Simone to reject common sense and make the impossible possible. Together they discover that the giant mecha are piloted by beastmen, animalistic creatures with human-like intelligence, and there are also other people on the surface fighting against the beastmen just like Yoko. When they defeat one of the mechas, Kamina decides to hijack it and pilot it himself, something that never occurred to the humans on the surface. But because Kamina is a visionary, he breaks through the paradigm. He keeps moving forward, seeing what the others cannot see, and that is what inspires the other humans on the surface to follow his example. They hijack other gunmen, turning them into weapons for their side, and together they form a human resistance force against the Beastmen. In order to emphasize again the importance of all of this and of Plato's allegory of the cave, in episode 5, Simon, Kamina, and the others who now follow them on their quest to defeat the Beastmen stumble into another underground village by accident. In this village called Adai, the gunmen mecha are worshipped like gods. And when Kamina tells them that the gunmen are not gods but merely mecha piloted by beastmen, they get upset because he is challenging their long-held beliefs. Again, Kamina plays the role of the philosopher who leaves the cave and then returns to try to enlighten the others who are still stuck inside the cave. Kamina searches for the truth and for justice, and he cannot understand that there are people out there who are willing to live a lie just because it's easier than accepting the truth. Kamina is an idealist, someone who always looks forward and yearns for truth and justice, someone who is never satisfied with the way things are, with the status quo. Some have said that Kamina is just crazy and reckless, and this includes characters in the actual show and viewers of the anime. But Kamina is exactly the type of person humanity needs. In the horribly bleak and dangerous situation that humans find themselves in the caves and on the surface, common sense is not enough. Being reasonable and practical is not enough. Common sense says that they're all screwed. The beastmen are more powerful and they will kill them all. There is no hope. Kamina takes it upon himself to be the symbol and the pillar of hope for others. He refuses to accept the so-called inevitable. He thinks outside the box, and by seeing his example and following it, the other humans on the surface become hopeful and confident that they can make a difference. Kamina is a visionary and a true leader, exactly the type of leader humanity needs at this point, which is why others follow him. Even though Kamina seems crazy to some, we have to remember that throughout history, a lot of geniuses and visionaries were considered crazy by most of society. Nikola Tesla was called crazy when in the late 1800s he advocated for alternating current as superior to the more established direct current that was being pushed by Thomas Edison. In the end, alternating current won out and we all use it to power our homes today. Steve Jobs was also called crazy for thinking that everyone will one day own a personal computer in their homes, way back when computers were the size of an entire room, and we all know how that turned out. And just like them, Kamina was called crazy for wanting to leave the cave, for wanting to fight back against impossible odds. And yet he inspired and mobilized so many others, and because of him, they were able to achieve the impossible. I don't want to get into too many spoilers, and I could talk about Gurren Lagann and the philosophy behind it not only for an entire video, but for an entire series of long videos. But the main point here is that every time I watch Gurren Lagann and I look at the actions of Kamina, I just get inspired to think beyond what society says is possible and to see what others can't see. I am inspired to leave the cave and to do the impossible, or what others think is impossible because they don't know any better. All they know are the shadows on the wall of the cave. I try to do my very best to make Kamina's philosophy and outlook on life my philosophy and my outlook on life every single day. What I am doing right here, right now in this video is in large part due to the philosophy that I learned from Kamina and Gurren Lagann. As I mentioned earlier, after years and years of university and finishing a PhD, I couldn't find a job. It was a major low point in my life. And if I didn't have Kamina's idealistic and uplifting philosophy, if I didn't know to think outside the box and defy conventional wisdom, I would probably still be desperately searching for some academic job that may never come. If I didn't have Gurren Lagann, I never would have even considered that after putting all that time and work into a PhD, I could make a career out of talking about anime on the internet. But here I am doing exactly that. Gurren Lagann changed my life, and it continues to change my life every day as I do my best to implement Kamina's philosophy on a daily basis. I may not be able to use fighting spirit to pilot a mecha, but I can apply those lessons symbolically to everything I do. Whether I am feeling down about not being able to find a traditional job, or whether I am overcoming stress, anxiety, and self-doubt. Whenever I face a seemingly impossible challenge, I know to grit those teeth and I think, who the hell do you think I am? I am so grateful to the creators of all 5 of these amazing works that truly changed my life. I am grateful that I'm able to make videos like this one talking about the things that I love with all of you. And I invite you guys to tell me down in the comments which anime changed your life in some way, except Boku no Pico and Cory in the House, because I think those two speak for themselves. If you enjoyed this video and want to see me make a part 2, be sure to leave a like to let me know. If we hit 1,000 likes, I will definitely make a part 2 that talks about 5 more anime that changed my life. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!